Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Tonight, we're not talking about glorious battles or noble kings. We're talking about something far weirder, something history mostly shrugs at because it makes polite sense crawl into a hole and die. Let's be clear, no one in Strasbourg in July of 1518 woke up and said, "You know what? I feel like spontaneously combusting into a non-stop dance-a-thon that might kill me." That's not how this works. That's not how anything works. This is the story of the dancing plague, a month where a city lost its mind, one frantic step at a time. So before we dive into this one, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, peeling back the complex and intriguing layers of the past, especially the ones that smell faintly of desperation and bad decisions. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan, and get ready for a journey, because tonight we are easing into history together, into its strange and sometimes intriguing depths. You're Frau Troffea. It's July 1518. Strasbourg, you step into the street. Maybe you're heading to the market. Maybe just getting some air. The air probably smells like wood smoke, sewage, and the low, persistent hum of anxiety that was basically the background noise of 16th century Europe. But today there's a new feeling, a compulsion, a twitch. It starts in your feet, just a tap, a shuffle, but it doesn't stop. It grows. Your legs begin to move, not because you want them to, because they are. You try to stop, you can't. It's like your muscles have signed a contract you didn't agree to, and the only clause is move. You are dancing, violently, alone, in the street. People stare. You probably look ridiculous, maybe drunk. But the look on your face isn't reverie, it's confusion, then panic. You can't catch your breath properly. Your heart is starting to race. Still, the feet pound the cobblestones. Tap, shuffle, stomp, faster, harder. Think about that moment through a 16th century lens. What would they see? Not a medical mystery. They'd see a soul in torment, a body possessed by demons or cursed by a saint. Modern ethics would demand immediate medical intervention, quiet rooms, doctors. Their reality, public spectacle, fear, and religious interpretations. Your suffering wasn't a private health crisis. It was potentially a public sign of supernatural displeasure. Your body wasn't just yours. It was a battleground for forces they couldn't comprehend, interpreted through the brutal lens of faith and superstition. It wasn't just unlucky. It was potentially blasphemous, and the dancing continues. Hour one blurs into hour two, the sun climbs higher, sweat plasters your hair to your temples, your throat is raw, every joint screams, but the feet have minds of their own. They insist, tap, shuffle, stomp. Others are starting to gather, not to help, to watch. What is happening to you makes no sense to them. It barely makes sense to you. This isn't dancing, it's an involuntary, grotesque performance. And it's just getting started, because soon you wouldn't be dancing alone. And in that intriguing stillness, something truly stark began to stir. You're watching Frau Troffea, or maybe you're trying not to. It's unsettling, deeply, profoundly unsettling. But then you feel it, a tremor in your own foot, a twitch in your calf. No, not you, you have things to do. Places to be that don't involve flailing awkwardly in public until you collapse. But the feeling persists. It's not in your head, it's in your legs and your feet. And then, despite every ounce of your will, you are moving too. A stumble, a jig. A frantic, graceless series of steps that you cannot command to stop. You look around. Frau Troffea is still going, eyes wide, face slick with sweat. And now she's not the only one. Another person on the corner, a man near the well. A woman by the baker's stall. They're all doing it. This terrible, compelled movement. The street is becoming a stage for human bodies acting against their owner's will. The sound builds, not music, not yet. Just the frantic scuffing of shoes or bare feet on stone, labored breathing, maybe whimpers, grunts of effort and distress. The air itself feels thick with a strange, escalating panic. What kind of madness is this? What invisible key has been turned in human bodies, forcing this relentless, exhausting rhythm? And the authorities, the city council, they watch this bizarre, terrifying phenomenon unfold, and their reaction is a masterpiece of historical absurdity. Remember, they aren't thinking virus or toxin. They're thinking divine wrath, demonic influence, or astrological misfortune. Their solution, Mori dancing. Yes, you read that right. They decided the cure was to build a wooden stage in the market square and hire musicians. Their logic, if it's a supernatural affliction, maybe you just have to let it run its course. Dance it out of the system. Get it all out of their system. What could possibly go wrong? It's the ultimate political irony. Faced with a literal plague of involuntary movement, the people in charge facilitate more involuntary movement. They believed they were managing a crisis. In reality, they were adding kindling to a fire. They provided the stage, the soundtrack, and the official sanction for people to suffer themselves to death in public. So now you're not just a solitary figure of distress. You're part of an ever-growing, unwilling troupe. You're packed together, stumbling, bumping into each other. The musicians they hired play, probably a frantic, repetitive tune, adding a grotesque soundtrack to the scene. Your vision blurs, your lungs burn, every muscle fiber screams in protest, but the feet are relentless. They don't care about your pain, they only know the rhythm. And the city authorities, in their infinite, baffling wisdom, have just turned up the volume. But it got worse, because of course it did. Days pass, yes, days you haven't slept, you haven't eaten, your legs are screaming, your feet are raw, maybe bleeding through torn stockings or directly onto the stone. Every breath is a ragged gasp pulled into burning lungs. You stumble, you fall, but somehow you are compelled to get back up, your limbs jerking you into motion again. The sheer physical toll is unimaginable. It's a marathon of agony, run by a body that is no longer taking orders from your mind. The air around the dancing crowd is thick, not just with sweat and the smell of desperate, unwashed bodies, but with a palpable sense of dread. The sounds aren't just footsteps anymore. There are moans, cries. The thud of collapsing bodies that this time don't get back up. Heart failure, stroke, sheer, absolute exhaustion. People are literally dancing themselves to death, and you might be next. The musicians play on, following council orders, providing the relentless beat to this nightmare disco. Their faces probably a mix of fear, confusion, and grim determination because, well, they're being paid. Your fellow dancers are no longer individuals. They are a writhing, staggering mass. Eyes are vacant or wild with terror, some foam at the mouth, some babble incoherently. The line between involuntary dance and complete physical breakdown has dissolved. You are a puppet in a horrifying, citywide show, and the strings are being pulled by something invisible, relentless, and cruel. How do you explain this if you don't have germs, neurology, or psychology? You reach for the supernatural. For the 16th century mind, this wasn't a medical anomaly. It was a cosmic or spiritual event. It could be the wrath of Saint Vitus, punishing sin with unstoppable movement. It could be demons, possessing the weak-willed and forcing them into unholy gyrations. It could be astrological alignments or divine judgment. The sheer absurdity, from our perspective, is that the inexplicable was immediately filtered through a lens of curses, saints, and hellfire. The cure wasn't rest or hydration. It was more dancing, maybe an exorcism or a pilgrimage. They applied spiritual and social fixes to what was fundamentally a physical and psychological breakdown, leading to truly bizarre and ultimately fatal interventions. Their reality was steeped in symbolism and divine causation, leading to actions that seem utterly insane to us, faced with human suffering. So you dance, surrounded by others who are also dancing against their will. Trapped in your own body, watching others succumb to the same bizarre, relentless fate. The pounding in your chest isn't just exertion now, it's terror, because you understand, with a chilling certainty, that the music might not stop until you do. The days blend into one long, agonizing blur of movement and pain. The soles of your feet feel like raw meat. Your muscles seize and cramp, but the relentless compulsion overrides it, forcing grotesque, jerky movements. You stumble, you fall, scraping knees and hands on the rough stone. The exhaustion is a physical weight pressing down on you, fighting against the invisible force that keeps you moving. You try pleading, you try screaming, nothing helps. The music plays on, provided by the city. The crowd of watchers grows, a mix of terrified citizens, the morbidly curious, and maybe priests muttering prayers or attempting exorcisms that seem utterly useless against this physical, relentless torment. You see people you know, neighbors, friends, family, perhaps caught in the same inescapable rhythm. There is no recognition in their eyes, just the same blank, strained look of someone trapped in a personal hell, performing for an unwilling audience. The smell is overpowering now, not just sweat, but fear and the faint, sickening odor of sickness and collapse. You trip over a body, someone who finally found release in death. There's no time to react, no capacity for grief. You are just forced to stumble past, your feet already finding the next patch of cobblestone for their terrible dance. For a period, the city sources recorded deaths averaging around 15 a day. 15 lives lost, not to battle or typical disease, but to this bizarre, uncontrollable affliction that the authorities initially tried to encourage. What does that number say about how life was valued, or perhaps, how little control people felt they had over their own fate in the face of perceived divine or supernatural forces? 15 people a day dying in such a grotesque, public manner wasn't just a tragedy. It was a horrifying spectacle that reinforced a worldview where the body was fragile, susceptible to invisible forces, and where explanations lay in curses and cosmology, not comprehension. Their response, however bizarre, reveals a profound difference in how they understood calamity and human fragility compared to our modern medical lens. Your death if it came, wasn't a medical event. It was potentially a spiritual one, performed publicly for a terrified city. You keep moving, 15 a day. That number echoes in your mind, even through the haze of exhaustion. Each collapse is a chilling reminder of your own precarious position. The dance continues, and the only way out seems to be to stop permanently. Your body is breaking, plain and simple. Every joint grinds. Tendons feel like stretched cord. Muscles are screaming, tearing. Your feet are beyond blistered. They are wounds that pound against the ground. The pain is a constant, blinding roar in your skull, a counter-rhythm to the relentless beat your feet demand. Thirst is an agony. Hunger is a distant memory. Sleep, an impossible dream your exhausted mind can barely conjure. You stagger. You sway, you fall hard, you hit the stone. For a blessed second, movement stops. Relief washes over you. Is this it? Is it over? No. Your legs twitch. Your arms flail. There's an invisible force, a terrible puppeteer that heaves you back up. Unsteadily, grotesquely, you're upright again, and the feet begin their work. Stomp, shuffle, grind. The rhythm is back. It never left. It was just waiting. You realize it then, with horrifying clarity. There is no stopping, not like this. Not until you can't. Not until your body is truly, finally, irrevocably broken. Death isn't a fear anymore. It's the only possible escape. The only way the music stops. The only way your feet finally rest. And all around you, the city's solution plays on. The stage, the musicians, the official sanction for this mass breakdown. The symbolic absurdity is overwhelming. Faced with a phenomenon they couldn't explain through reason, they leaned into the madness, believing a spiritual problem needed a physical, performative release. They treated the symptom as the cure, fueling the very thing that was killing people. It's a stark reminder that when rational understanding fails, humanity often retreats into ritual, superstition, and actions that, in retrospect, seem utterly nonsensical. They thought they were battling a curse. They were facilitating a mass death by exhaustion, all under the guise of managing the inexplicable. The stage wasn't for entertainment. It was an altar built for involuntary sacrifice. You dance on the stage they built, or stumble past it. It doesn't matter. It's all the same relentless movement. The distinction between official stage and open street has blurred. You are just another body, jerking, flailing, suffering. And the climax of this realization hits you with the force of a physical blow. Your own body is the executioner, and the city provided the soundtrack and the platform. There is no rescue, only the end of the music. And the worst part. This wasn't even the strangest twist. Your lungs burn with every ragged breath. The smell of the crowd, of sweat, of fear, is thick and cloying. The sounds are a symphony of the damned. The relentless shuffling of feet, the low moans of agony, the occasional sharp cry as someone collapses for good. Your vision tunnels. You can see the blurred faces watching, the concerned, the terrified, the merely curious. They look alien, distant. You are trapped inside the terrible, jerking confines of your own flesh, and the world outside feels miles away. Control, that's a quaint memory. Your arms flail. Your head whips back and forth. Sometimes you trip, face-splinting onto the hard ground, tasting dust and maybe blood from a split lip. Getting up isn't a conscious decision. It's just your body obeying the relentless internal command to move. It's less like dancing now and more like a terrible, sustained seizure. Your limbs are independent agents of suffering, and you are just a passenger in this collapsing vehicle. Sleep is a torturer. Your mind screams for it, but the body refuses to rest. You might hallucinate from exhaustion, seeing demons in the shadows, feeling unseen hands pushing you, pulling you, forcing the pace. The line between the physical torment and mental breakdown blurs until it ceases to exist. You are pain, you are movement, you are fear. Remember the city council, the brilliant minds who thought the solution was more dancing. Their plan is now a visible, undeniable failure. People are still dancing, yes, but they're also dying. The stage they built isn't a cure. It's a very public platform for suffering and death. What do they do now? They ban public dancing. They try segregation, moving the dancers to a specific location, maybe a chapel dedicated to Saint Vitus, still clinging to the religious explanation. The political maneuvering is pathetic. They went from facilitating the problem to weakly attempting to contain it, all while maintaining a facade of control and understanding they clearly didn't possess. Their authority, built on maintaining order and appealing to divine favor, is exposed as utterly useless in the face of this bizarre reality. They built a stage for a miracle cure, and instead they got a charnel house set to music. And still you move, past the watchers, past the stage that mocks with its original, idiotic intent, past the bodies that no longer dance. You are a machine of pain and motion, one among dozens, maybe hundreds by now, each a testament to a city's nightmare and its leader's baffling incompetence. You keep moving, because the alternative is collapse. And that, you know now, is the only true escape. But there was more to this grim ballet than just exhaustion and bad decisions. The world is reduced to the raw, burning sensation in your chest, the relentless, jarring impact of your feet, and a desperate, clawing thirst. Your vision swims, shapes blur. Faces in the crowd become indistinct masks of fear or judgment. You might be mumbling or crying out, sounds torn from a raw throat that feels like sandpaper. You're not just tired. You are hollowed out, a husk powered by a terrifying, invisible engine. Hours bleed into more hours, days into more days. You've lost track. Time is just the continuous, agonizing present of movement. The pain is a dull roar that sometimes sharpens into flashes of agony as a muscle cramps or a blister bursts open. You stumble, catching yourself on a stranger, whose eyes reflect the same trapped horror as your own. There is no conversation, no comfort, just the shared, silent language of involuntary torment. You see the carts moving through the crowd, collecting the bodies, the ones who finally stopped. 15 a day was just an estimate. The real number, who knows? All you know is the spaces around you are constantly, grimly being renewed as exhaustion claims another soul. And you are still here, still moving. As you dance, imagine the people watching you. They aren't just spectators, they are interpreters. In a world saturated with religious belief and fear of the unknown, your suffering wasn't merely physical. It was a moral and spiritual Rorschach test for them. Were you a sinner being punished for hidden transgressions? Was this a sign of the impending apocalypse? Were you a victim of a curse, perhaps deserving of it? The terror they felt was likely mixed with judgment. They didn't have the framework of mental illness or neurological disorder. They had sin, salvation, demons, and saints. Your involuntary agony was a sermon in motion, reinforcing their beliefs about the fragile boundary between the physical world and the terrifying, powerful spiritual realm. It was a public display of how easily a body could be hijacked, and therefore how precarious the soul's position might be. They looked at you, and they saw not just a suffering person, but a reflection of their deepest fears and moral anxieties. Your pain legitimized their superstitions. You keep moving, a figure of pity and fear, perhaps even condemnation in their eyes. Their interpretations don't reach you, not anymore. There is only the dance, the pain. The desperate, silent plea for it to end. The city, the stage, the onlookers, they all fade. There is only the terrible, internal engine that refuses to cease. But even the most relentless storm eventually loses its fury. The frantic energy begins to drain away, not because you've willed it to, but because there is simply nothing left. Your muscles are jelly, your lungs rasp like bellows full of dust. The steps become shuffles, then stumbles, then a simple, agonizing sway. The invisible puppeteer isn't cutting the strings, it's just letting them go slack because the puppet is too broken to dance properly anymore. You might collapse again. But this time, getting up is a struggle against the very force that compelled you. It's a fight against gravity, powered by a body that is consuming itself. Some dancers just crumple to the ground, lying there twitching, moaning, until even that stops. The silence from one fallen body is a profound, terrible thing amidst the ongoing, weary motion of others. Your mind, perhaps freed slightly from the relentless physical demand, begins to register the horror more fully. The days lost. The people gone, the sheer, incomprehensible reality of what has happened. You are a survivor, perhaps, but what exactly have you survived? Weeks of relentless, involuntary torment. So the dancing finally starts to wind down after weeks, thanks to exhaustion, death, and maybe the surviving dancers being physically removed and confined. Does the city council issue a statement saying, "Our bad hiring musicians and building a stage wasn't the medical breakthrough we thought it was"? Absolutely not. As the spontaneous dancing faded, the authorities leaned harder into the spiritual explanation. They orchestrated official processions to chapels dedicated to Saint Vitus. They ordered public prayers. They framed the ending of the plague not as a result of human beings simply reaching the absolute limit of physical endurance and dying, but as divine intervention, a response to their pious acts. The political irony is sharp enough to cut. Faced with a disaster they exacerbated with their initial, bizarre plan, they tried to reclaim authority and narrative control by claiming credit for its cessation through religious means. They couldn't stop the dancing, but they could certainly organize a thank you parade to the saint they thought caused it. You sag against a wall, or perhaps you are carried away, weak and broken. The dancing has stopped for you. But the memory of it, the feeling of your body being a stranger, will likely never leave. You are left with the wreckage, and a city that is trying very hard to pretend it understood any of it. The plague might have ended its visible, horrifying performance, but the questions lingered like a bad taste. In silence, It descends like a physical weight after weeks of relentless sound, the shuffling, the moaning, the terrible, persistent beat of the musicians. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Every muscle fiber feels torn, every joint protests. If you survived, you're likely gaunt, dehydrated, maybe injured from falls. The compulsion is gone, replaced by an utter, profound exhaustion. You can stop moving now. The problem is you barely have the strength to move at all. The streets are scarred, literal scars from feet on stone, and deeper ones, the memory of the dancing plague doesn't just vanish. How could it? You watched neighbors die, saw friends reduced to jerking automatons, felt your own body betray you in the most terrifying way possible. Life is supposed to go back to normal, but normal feels wrong. Like the silence is just waiting for the music to start again. What was it? What was it? The question hangs heavy in the air, unanswered by stages, musicians, or desperate prayers. The people of Strasbourg and the few chroniclers who dared record this madness had their theories. Saint Vitus's curse was popular, a saintly punishment delivered through involuntary dance. Maybe hot blood was the culprit, a bodily imbalance needing to be literally worked out. Astrological alignments, demonic possession, all were trotted out, desperate attempts to fit the square peg of this bizarre reality into the round hole of their understanding. You danced because a saint was angry, or because the stars were wrong, or because you were bad. It promised clarity, and then it delivered nothing but confusing, often judgmental, post hoc explanations. Compare that to our modern theories. Ergot poisoning from contaminated rye bread, causing hallucinations and spasms, or mass psychogenic illness, a form of collective delusion where anxiety and stress manifest in physical symptoms spread through social connection. Neither is a perfect, universally accepted answer for 1518, but they come from a framework of biology, psychology, and environment, not saints and curses. What does this gap tell us? It screams volumes about humanity's desperate need to explain the inexplicable, and how those explanations are always filtered through the dominant beliefs and fears of the time. Your bizarre, agonizing dance wasn't just a physical event. It was interpreted as a moral or spiritual one, reflecting a world where the body was a porous boundary, easily influenced by forces unseen. Modern science seeks a material cause. They sought a meaningful one, even if that meaning was divine punishment. The horror wasn't just in the dancing. It was in the terrifying, unpredictable nature of existence itself, proving how little control they truly had. So you rest, you recover maybe, but the image of that relentless, involuntary movement is burned into your mind, into the city's memory. The physical plague ended, but the haunting question of why, that dance is far from over. And the echoes of that strange, terrifying summer are still trying to teach us something. You survived, maybe. You might walk with a limp now, or your hands might tremble. The sheer physical abuse your body endured leaves its mark, and the mind, it carries its own scars. The memory of being a prisoner in your own flesh, forced into that relentless, public agony, the sound of the feet, the moans, the sight of the collapsed bodies, that doesn't just fade like a bad dream. It lodges somewhere deep, a cold, sharp reminder of how fragile control is. how easily your own body can become an enemy, an instrument of bizarre, incomprehensible torment. Years pass. The city tries to forget, or at least file it away under unfortunate bizarre event. The records exist, sparse and bewildered, noting the deaths, the official response, the sheer strangeness of it all. Historians will debate it centuries later, tossing around theories like ergot poisoning, a fungus on rye grain, capable of causing spasms, hallucinations, death, or mass psychogenic illness, extreme stress and anxiety boiling over into contagious physical symptoms, a kind of shared delusion expressed through the body. Maybe it was a confluence of everything, poison and panic, stress and suggestion. But here's the enduring, frustrating truth: we still don't know for sure. We have theories rooted in science and psychology. They had saints, demons, and hot blood rooted in faith and fear. Look at the gap. They built a stage and hired musicians to encourage people to dance themselves to death because their worldview demanded a spiritual or moral explanation for the physical chaos. We look back with a mix of horror and condescending pity, armed with our understanding of chemicals and crowd behavior. But what does that really tell us? That faced with the truly inexplicable, human nature grasps for any explanation, no matter how bizarre, no matter how useless, no matter how fatal. It highlights our fundamental discomfort with chaos and our desperate need to impose narrative, even if the narrative is "a saint cursed us with killer choreography." And it makes you wonder, what are we doing right now in our own anxieties, in our own world of unseen threats and overwhelming information, that future generations will look back on with the same bewildered horror at our sheer, symbolic absurdity? We may not be building stages for involuntary dancing, but our need to explain the unknown, to find meaning in chaos, to control the uncontrollable, that hasn't danced away, not at all. The dancing plague faded. The music stopped, the feet finally rested, but history didn't record it as a medical triumph or a puzzle solved. It just happened, a strange, terrible footnote. A moment when a city literally lost its footing, driven by forces nobody understood. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real horror, not the dancing itself, but the chilling, silent knowledge that sometimes your body isn't yours, the world makes no sense, and all you can do is move until you can't. You didn't dance yourself to death. You just danced until you vanished into the strange, inconvenient silence of history. That strange echo of involuntary rhythm, the discomfort of a body turned against itself. It can linger, can't it? That chilling reminder of how little control we sometimes have over our own fragile form, how desperately we search for reasons in the face of physical chaos. We grappled with a city that danced itself into silence, driven by forces still debated. But the human story, in its relentless pursuit of meaning, finds countless ways to confront the body, transcend suffering, and seek control. Not always through external explanations or forced movement, but sometimes through an intense, internal discipline. Leave the crowded, bewildered streets behind for a moment. Feel the air cool, perhaps. Grow still. As we drift towards a different landscape entirely, a place where the body was not a site of random torment, but a deliberate, chosen path to transcendence, where silence wasn't just the end of the music, but a profound state of being. achieved through acts that challenge everything you thought you knew about life, death, and the ultimate purpose of the flesh. We're going somewhere else entirely. We are going to the mountains of Japan, where some men decided that enlightenment wasn't just a state of mind. It was a state of body, a mummified state, achieved through a process so deliberate, so brutal, that it punches holes in most modern ideas of spiritual pursuit and physical survival. This isn't just history. This is a journey into the absolute limits of human endurance and belief. Now let the silence descend. Feel the air grow thin and cold as we explore the path to becoming a living Buddha. You are a monk, not just any monk. You follow the path of Shujendo, a mountain ascetic practice blending Buddhism, Shinto, and other indigenous beliefs. You seek enlightenment, spiritual power, a connection so profound it transcends the messy, demanding reality of the flesh. You meditate, you chant, you endure harsh conditions in the mountains. But for some, that wasn't enough. The ultimate goal, to become a Soka Shinbutsu, a living Buddha, to achieve enlightenment in your current physical form and then preserve that form miraculously after death as proof. Sounds complicated. It is. Sounds painful, monumentally so. Sounds voluntary. Yes, that's the part that really messes with you. This wasn't something that happened to you. This was a decision, a commitment. You looked at your body, this fragile sack of meat and bone that demands food, sleep, comfort, and you saw an obstacle, something to be overcome, transformed, not just spiritually but physically. You wanted to become a vessel of the sacred, impervious to decay, a permanent beacon of enlightenment. And the first step on this long, brutal path, undermining the body's basic needs, starving it of the very things it craves. We view starvation as a tragedy, a failure of society or circumstances. In Soka Shinbutsu, it was a choice, a discipline, the foundation of spiritual success. How does this contrast highlight a cultural blind spot? We see the body's needs as fundamental rights or biological imperatives. They saw them as attachments, chains binding the spirit. Denying the body wasn't self-destruction. It was, in their view, radical self-purification. It forced a confrontation with physical desire, with the very essence of being embodied. What does it say about their moral framework that achieving ultimate spiritual purity involved such extreme physical degradation? It suggests a belief system where the flesh is, at best, a temporary tool and at worst, a cage to be escaped, even through brutal self-denial. Your willingness to starve wasn't seen as masochism. It was seen as profound spiritual strength. So you drastically alter your diet. No more grains, rice, wheat, the staples that provide comfort and energy. Just roots, nuts, berries, bark found in the mountains. Small amounts. Just enough to keep you alive, but constantly, painfully hungry. Your body immediately protests. Hunger pangs gnaw at your gut. Weakness creeps into your limbs. Your mind fixates on food, but you push through. This isn't about losing weight for vanity. It's about starting the long, slow process of dismantling the physical self, of literally shedding the weight of the world, one agonizing, hungry day at a time. And this slow, deliberate denial was just the polite beginning. You've been on the root and berry diet for, say, a year, maybe two. Time gets strange up here in the mountains. Your stomach has shrunk, but the hunger is a dull, constant ache, a reminder of the body's stubborn insistence on living. You are thinner, much thinner, your clothes hang loose, every movement feels a little heavier, a little more demanding, but the real work is just beginning. The next stage. This is where it gets truly brutal. You eliminate more. Specifically, things that could cause your body to decay after death. That means no more beans or legumes. These foods, while providing some sustenance, were believed to feed the bacteria that cause decomposition. Your goal isn't just to die. It's to die in a way that prevents decay. So you strip the diet down further. Just roots, bark, leaves, minimal amounts, just enough to put off the inevitable for a little longer. The effect is devastating. Your body, already starved for grains, now loses the plant protein and remaining calories from beans. It starts consuming itself in earnest. The last reserves of fat vanish. Muscles begin to atrophy, wasting away. Your skin hangs loose on your bones. You become skeletal, frail. Walking is difficult. Meditation, perched on a cold mountain ledge, becomes an exercise in resisting collapse. The harsh mountain environment, cold, wind, rain, adds to the stress, burning calories you don't have. You are literally drying out, purging the body of moisture and fat, becoming a walking, meditating skeleton. Think about this from our modern perspective. We see dietary restrictions for health, for weight loss, for ethical reasons, but eliminating specific foods to prevent decay after death. That's a level of control over the physical form that is utterly alien to most modern thought. It highlights a profound difference in the moral and spiritual calculus. For them, the physical body was not an endpoint, but a temporary vehicle, a potential obstacle to ultimate spiritual freedom and expression. Foods weren't just calories, they were agents that could hinder or help the process of spiritual transformation, even post-mortem. This wasn't about physical health. It was about spiritual engineering, using diet as a tool to conquer death's natural processes. Your gaunt, suffering body wasn't a sign of illness. It was a sign of progress, of successfully shedding the impurities that tied you to the cycle of decay. So you continue the diet, you meditate, you walk the mountain paths, each step an effort, further draining your meager energy stores. You are transforming yourself intentionally into something less fleshy, less perishable. You are preparing the vessel for its ultimate, unmoving purpose. The physical pain is immense, the hunger a constant companion, but the belief in the sacred goal is what drives you. Stripping the body bare intentionally, because the next step. Well, that step is designed to make decay physically impossible, and the process of becoming a living Buddha was about to take a far more toxic turn. The diet of roots and bark continues, grinding you down further, but simply starving yourself isn't enough to cheat decay after death. You need to make the body itself uninhabitable, toxic, unpalatable to the worms, the bacteria, the hungry things that claim the flesh after the spirit departs. So you start drinking a special tea. This isn't calming green tea. This is tea brewed from the bark and sap of the uarashi tree. The Chinese lacquer tree, the stuff they use to make beautiful, durable, highly toxic lacquerware. You know, the kind of thing that gives you a severe rash just from touching it. Yes, that stuff, boiled down into a drink. It tastes terrible. Bitter, astringent, it burns going down, and its purpose is brutally simple: to make you vomit repeatedly. It's a violent purge. Whatever meager contents are left in your stomach, whatever remaining fluids are clinging to your body, the Uarashi tea works to expel them. You throw up bile, you throw up water, you throw up anything and everything until there is nothing left but dry, heaving wretches. This isn't about nourishment, it's the opposite. It's about aggressive, forced dehydration and internal cleansing by way of poison. Pause and consider the sheer, symbolic absurdity of this. You are voluntarily consuming a known toxin. In any other context, this is attempted suicide or accidental poisoning. Here, it is a sacred act of purification. The body, seen as inherently corruptible, is being deliberately poisoned to make it incorruptible by natural means. Decay is a natural process. Defying it requires unnatural intervention. The Uarashi tea isn't just a physical tool, it's a potent symbol. You are literally imbibing toxicity to achieve purity, making the body a fortress against post-mortem invasion by making it poisonous to all life, even the microscopic kind. It flips the script on health and harm, life and death, in a way that our modern, biology-focused minds struggle to fully grasp. It's like saying the way to build a safe house is to make the bricks out of pure, weaponized nope. You drink the tea, you vomit, you rest for a short, miserable while, then drink it again. Over days, weeks, months maybe, depending on the specific lineage and practice. Your body shrivels further. Your skin becomes like parchment stretched over bone. Your lips crack. Your eyes sink back into their sockets. You are not just thin, you are becoming desiccated. A walking, meditating, poisonous mummy in progress. The tea ensures that when you finally stop moving, there will be nothing left in you for decay to feed on, and anything that tries will be met with a toxic surprise. The body is now actively being hostile to life and preparing for a very specific kind of death. Because the next step, that involves a box and burial while you're still alive. After years, yes, years, of this brutal diet and the toxic tea regimen, you are ready for the final step. You are less a person now and more a biological curiosity, a being pushed to the absolute edge of physical existence. Your body is a ruin, but your mind, perhaps, is honed to an unimaginable degree by the relentless discipline and proximity to death. A small, cramped wooden box is prepared. Just large enough for you to sit in the lotus position. This box is then lowered into a pit dug deep into the mountain earth. Inside the box, there's an air tube, a bamboo reed that connects you to the world above, allowing you to breathe. You also have a bell. You sit in the box. In the dark, underground, the earth is packed around the box, burying you alive. The only connection to the surface world is that thin bamboo tube bringing in air and the occasional sound of the bell you ring each day to let those above know you are still alive, still meditating. Still on the path, but who was watching this? Other monks in the lineage, disciples, maybe even local villagers, filled with a mix of awe, reverence, and perhaps fear. This wasn't a secret, shame-all act. It was, within the context of this specific shugendo practice, a public, sacred ritual. The digging of the pit, the preparation of the box, the daily ringing of the bell, these were acts overseen and supported by the community. Think of the political irony. While most societies fear burial alive and see it as the ultimate act of cruelty or punishment, here it was the goal. It was facilitated by the religious community as the highest form of ascetic achievement. The earth, the ultimate agent of decay, was instead used as a tool for preservation. A cool, dry environment meant to aid in the mummification process by preventing moisture. Society, or at least this specific religious society, wasn't burying you to forget you. They were burying you to preserve you, facilitating a process that defied the natural order of death and decay through deliberate, ritualized action. So you sit in the dark, in the cold earth, you breathe the damp, stale air through a reed, and you meditate. The bell rings out each day. Bong, a signal I am still here. Your body is shutting down, slowly, organ by organ. The Uarashi tea has done its work internally, and the lack of food and water is finishing the job. The air tube provides just enough oxygen to prolong the agony, to allow the final stages of meditation and physical collapse to unfold. The sound of the bell is the only proof you still exist, still strive. Bong, still here, until one day the bell doesn't ring. Silence, the absence of the bell's daily report, is the grim confirmation. You are no longer alive. Your journey in this physical form has reached its conclusion, but the process isn't over for those who remain. After the bell stops ringing, they don't immediately exhume you. No, there's another waiting period, usually around 1,000 days, over 2.5 years. You are left in the dark, underground in that wooden box in the mountain earth. Why? To allow nature, aided by your extreme preparation, to do its work. The dry, cool earth, the lack of moisture and fat in your body, the toxicity from the Uarashi tea, the hope is that these conditions have prevented decay, drying the body out rather than allowing it to rot. Imagine that wait for the monks and disciples above. They performed the ritual, they buried you alive, they heard your daily signal, and then silence. Was it successful? Did you achieve the impossible? They have to wait. Wait for the earth to hold its secrets, hoping that when they open the box, they will find not a decaying corpse, but something miraculous, something preserved. We have immediate burial or cremation, embalming to slow decay temporarily, grief counseling, a focus on the finality of death. They had a 2.5-year waiting period in a burial pit, hoping for a miracle of preservation as proof of spiritual achievement. This isn't just a different way of handling remains. It's a fundamentally different understanding of the relationship between life, death, and the physical form. Their moral framework allowed for, and even celebrated, a practice that involved burying someone alive and then waiting to see if they had successfully defied nature's most basic law through sheer spiritual will and physical discipline. The success or failure of your Sokushinbutsu attempt wasn't measured by whether you survived, but by whether your body decayed after death. Your physical state, post-mortem, was the ultimate measure of your spiritual purity and power. After 1,000 days, the box is exhumed. The earth is carefully removed, the lid is lifted. This is the moment of truth. What do they find inside? If the process was successful, they would find your body drastically desiccated, skin stretched taut over bone, leathery and preserved. A mummy, not a decaying corpse. If it was unsuccessful, well, they would find decay, and the attempt would be deemed a failure. But if successful, you were declared a Soka Shinbutsu, a living Buddha. Your journey through self-starvation, poisoning, and burial in the dark earth was over. You had willingly subjected your body to unimaginable extremes, not for survival, but for a sacred, unmoving permanence. The physical agony ended in that quiet underground box, but the spiritual goal in their eyes had been achieved. You were no longer just a monk, you were a relic, a testament, a miracle carved from bone and dried flesh. And the strange reverence for these self-made mummies reveals something profound about the human search for meaning, even in the face of extreme suffering. If your body was successfully mummified, meaning it hadn't significantly decayed, you weren't just left in the box. You were cleaned, dressed in robes, and placed in a temple, often in a seated meditative posture. You were no longer just a deceased monk. You were now revered as a Soka Shinbutsu, a living Buddha. Proof, in physical form, that enlightenment and spiritual discipline could transcend the limitations of the flesh and the inevitability of decay. Visitors would come, pilgrims, to see you, to offer prayers, to marvel at the physical manifestation of such extreme spiritual dedication. Your preserved body became a sacred object, a focal point for devotion, a silent sermon on the power of will and belief over the material world. Imagine the silence in that temple, broken only by whispers and the soft sounds of reverence. And there you sit, centuries later, a desiccated figure in robes, a testament to a path that is almost impossible for modern minds to fully grasp. Your physical suffering, the hunger, the pain, the toxic tea, the burial alive, it all culminated in this static, revered existence. You weren't just remembered, you were present. A permanent, tangible link to the possibility of transcending the ordinary, of achieving something beyond death itself through an act of radical self-transformation. You became a destination, a symbol. A legend made real in bone and dried tissue. Consider the institutional aspect. The temples that housed these Soka Shinbutsu became important centers of pilgrimage and influence. The presence of a living Buddha bestowed immense prestige and legitimacy upon the temple and the specific Shugendo lineage. It was tangible proof of the power of their practice, attracting followers and donations. The reverence wasn't just personal. It had a very real political and economic dimension for the religious institutions involved. Your extreme sacrifice, your willingness to undergo such a brutal, self-imposed process, became a form of spiritual capital for the temple. They didn't just honor you, they utilized your preserved body as a powerful tool for their own continuity and authority. The ultimate act of renunciation became, paradoxically, a source of earthly power and influence for the institution that facilitated it. Your stillness in the temple wasn't just personal transcendence, it was a foundation stone for the temple's prominence. And so you remain, sitting, silent, a relic of an extreme path, a reminder that the search for spiritual truth can lead down roads that challenge every instinct for comfort, safety, and even basic survival. You are a monument to belief, preserved against the natural order, a constant, silent witness to a radical answer to the problem of death and decay. But the story of the Soka Shinbutsu isn't just about the ones who succeeded. It's also about the ones who didn't. For every Soka Shinbutsu displayed in a temple, how many didn't make it? How many boxes were opened after 1,000 days to reveal decay, a body that had succumbed to the natural processes of decomposition despite the starvation, the toxic tea, the dry burial? It's impossible to know the exact numbers, as the failures were likely not publicized or preserved with the same reverence as the successes. If your attempt failed, if decay had set in, your body wasn't revered as a living Buddha. It was treated with respect, certainly, as the body of a monk who had undertaken an extreme ascetic practice. You would be given a proper burial, perhaps your remains cremated. Your spiritual effort would be acknowledged, but the ultimate physical proof of transcendence, the miraculous preservation, was not achieved. Imagine the disappointment, the questioning, for those who had watched, waited, hoped. For the lineage, for the temple, a failed Soka Shinbutsu attempt wasn't just the death of a monk. It was a challenge to the efficacy of the practice itself. It raised uncomfortable questions. Was their faith not strong enough? Was the preparation flawed? Did they lack the necessary spiritual purity or discipline? The failure of the body to defy decay implied a failure on a deeper spiritual level within the context of this specific belief system. The distinction between a successful Soka Shinbutsu and a failed one highlights a brutal moral calculus inherent in this practice. Success meant your extreme suffering and death resulted in something deemed spiritually miraculous and worthy of veneration. Failure, while still acknowledging the ascetic effort, meant your suffering and death led only to the natural, ordinary outcome decay. It implies a system where the outcome of your self-inflicted agony determined your spiritual status post-mortem. This contrasts sharply with many other spiritual traditions where the effort or intent of devotion is primary. Here, the physical state after death was the ultimate, brutal metric of spiritual achievement. Your sacrifice wasn't judged purely on your willingness to suffer, but on whether that suffering produced the desired, unnatural physical result. It's a harsh moral landscape, where the body's response after death became the final, unforgiving judge of a lifetime's spiritual quest. So while the successful Soka Shinbutsu sit in quiet reverence, the ones who failed are lost to the ordinary processes of history and decay. Their attempts, their years of starvation and suffering, are largely forgotten, swallowed by the earth they hoped would preserve them. Their silence is not the revered stillness of a living Buddha, but the final, anonymous quiet of a life that, by its own radical metric, did not quite achieve its impossible goal. And the very fact that this practice existed and was attempted raises unsettling questions about belief, the body, and the lengths some will go to for transcendence. The practice of Soka Shinbutsu wasn't widespread, even within Shugendo. It was an extreme path taken by a small number of monks, primarily associated with the Honzon and Tozen lineages, notably around Mount Udono in Yamagata Prefecture. It wasn't a casual undertaking. It required immense discipline, years of preparation, and the support of the monastic community and local populace. This wasn't an officially sanctioned Buddhist practice across the board. Many, even within Buddhism, would have viewed it as an extreme, possibly misguided interpretation of asceticism. It thrived in a specific cultural and religious environment where Shugendo's emphasis on mountain asceticism, physical endurance, and achieving spiritual power through confronting and transforming the body provided a context where such a radical act could be conceived and attempted. It required a belief system that saw the physical form not as something inherently sacred to be preserved in life, but as something to be transcended, even through its own deliberate deconstruction. Think about the logistics. The knowledge of the toxic plants, the specific dietary restrictions, the timing of the burial, the construction of the box and air tube, the understanding of how to prevent decay in that specific environment. This wasn't random self-harm. It was a highly ritualized, knowledgeable process passed down within specific lineages. It was a strange blend of folk knowledge about nature, extreme ascetic practice, and unique spiritual goals. And then the state stepped in. In 1877, the Meiji government of Japan officially banned soka shinbutsu. Japan was rapidly modernizing, adopting Western legal and social norms. Practices like self-mummification were seen as barbaric, superstitious, and an embarrassment to a nation trying to present itself as modern and enlightened on the world stage. The government, seeking to consolidate its power and redefine Japanese identity, cracked down on various Buddhist practices and Shugendo itself. The ban on soka shinbutsu wasn't primarily about the welfare of the monks. It was about the state asserting control over religious practice and eliminating what it deemed to be backward, pre-modern behavior that didn't fit the new national image. The state's action highlights a political irony. A practice undertaken as the ultimate act of spiritual freedom and transcendence was shut down by secular authorities as a matter of public order and national image. Your radical, personal quest for enlightenment was ultimately stopped, not by physical failure, but by a government decree. The soka shinbutsu who were already in temples were largely left alone, becoming historical relics of a banned practice. The path to becoming a living Buddha through this method was officially closed. An extreme, controversial chapter in Japanese religious history was brought to an end, not by a lack of willing ascetics, but by the stroke of a bureaucratic pen. The physical mummies remain, silent witnesses to a practice that defied the body, challenged the natural order, and was finally halted by the decidedly non-spiritual hand of the state. Today, there are fewer than 20 confirmed soka shinbutsu housed in various temples, mostly in Yamagata Prefecture. They are carefully preserved, often kept in climate-controlled environments, viewed as cultural artifacts and religious treasures. Pilgrims and tourists still visit, though perhaps with a different mix of awe, curiosity, and discomfort than those who came centuries ago. Seeing one in person is a confronting experience. The fragile, preserved human form, seated silently, a stark reminder of the extremes of human belief and physical endurance. These mummies serve as a physical link to a time when the boundaries between life and death, body and spirit, were understood in profoundly different ways. They challenge our modern assumptions about rationality, health, and what constitutes a normal spiritual path. They stand in silent defiance of the natural expectation of decay, a testament to an almost unimaginable level of self-discipline and faith in a specific, radical outcome. The debate around how they achieved this state continues. Was it purely the ascetic diet and the toxic tea drying and poisoning the body? Did the specific burial conditions play a crucial role? Was there an element of natural mummification due to the environment? Or was there something more, something related to the absolute mental focus and spiritual state of the monks? Science offers potential explanations, but the exact confluence of factors and the role of the monks' conscious will throughout the multi-year process remain debated and perhaps unknowable in their entirety. What does the very existence of these mummies and the stories surrounding them tell us about humanity? It speaks to a deep-seated desire for transcendence, a yearning to escape the limitations of the physical body and the finality of death. It reveals the incredible, terrifying capacity for self-inflicted suffering in pursuit of a perceived higher truth. It highlights how culture and belief systems can redefine pain, death, and the body itself, turning practices we would see as horrific suicide into acts of ultimate spiritual achievement. The Soka Shinbutsu force us to confront the fact that our own understanding of a meaningful life and death is just one framework among many, and that throughout history, people have found purpose in ways that can be profoundly disturbing and challenging to our modern moral compass. They are silent, preserved questions, asking us to look beyond our own comfortable assumptions about what the human body is for and what the human spirit is capable of. So they sit, the preserved monks, witnesses to a path few dared to tread, a process that pushed the body to its absolute breaking point in search of a permanent, unmoving spiritual peak. They are a potent, physical reminder that the search for meaning can lead to places far stranger and far more demanding than we might ever imagine. And the silence in their temples holds echoes of a belief so powerful, it allowed men to bury themselves alive. The path of the Soka Shinbutsu is closed. You cannot, legally or realistically, decide today that you want to starve yourself, drink toxic tea, and get buried alive in a box in a mountain pit to become a living Buddha. That specific door to transcendence has been shut, but the idea of it, the sheer, brutal extremity of it, continues to fascinate and disturb. It wasn't mass hysteria. It wasn't involuntary. It was a conscious, agonizing process undertaken by individuals driven by a profound, perhaps incomprehensible belief. They looked at the human condition, the inevitability of decay, the demands of the flesh, and found a radical, physical answer. They sought to purify the body by systematically dismantling it, to achieve permanence by embracing a living death. We have different ways of trying to cheat death now: cryonics, anti-aging research, digital consciousness uploads. Our methods involve technology, science, external intervention. Theirs involved radical self-discipline, ancient knowledge, and an internal battle against biology itself. Which is more extreme? Which is more successful at achieving a kind of permanence, a legacy that endures and forces people to look, to question, to confront the limits of understanding? The mummies, silent and still, seem to make a strong case for their method. at least in terms of sheer, undeniable physical presence across centuries. The Soka Shinbutsu are the ultimate symbolic embodiment of a battle against the human body. They saw it as a source of impurity, a barrier to enlightenment, something to be conquered and transformed into a sacred relic. Our modern world, conversely, often treats the body as something to be optimized, decorated, indulged, or preserved at all costs, but rarely as something inherently corrupt or a deliberate obstacle to spiritual growth in need of brutal taming. The absurdity, from their perspective, might be our relentless pursuit of physical comfort and longevity at the expense, perhaps, of deeper spiritual inquiry. From our perspective, their path was an act of horrifying, unnecessary self-mutilation. The Soka Shinbutsu sit in that stark, uncomfortable space between these worldviews, a physical embodiment of a different answer to the universal problem of mortality. They are a reminder that belief systems can warp our relationship with our own biology in profound and terrifying ways. Your ultimate act was to make your body irrelevant to the process of decay. You succeeded. Now you are studied, displayed, a curiosity. Was the price too high? The question hangs in the silent air of the temple. The Soka Shinbutsu didn't just die. They embarked on a multi-year process of becoming something else, something enduring. They achieved a kind of physical immortality, not of life, but of form, through a path of unimaginable suffering and absolute self-will. You didn't just mummify yourself. You turned your body into a question history still struggles to answer. So we've walked through a city where your own body became a stranger, compelled to move against your will, a terrifying dance with no music you chose. The dancing plague wasn't just a physical affliction. It was a public, agonizing testament to how vulnerable we are, how quickly control can vanish, and how desperately, sometimes absurdly, societies try to make sense of the utterly inexplicable. And then we journeyed to the quiet, brutal mountains, where men chose to make their bodies strangers, deliberately stripping them bare, poisoning them, burying themselves alive. The Soka Shinbutsu faced the inevitability of decay, not by fighting for life, but by embracing a planned, agonizing transformation, seeking permanence in stillness, a radical defiance of nature through ultimate self-control. These two stories, so vastly different in cause and intent, share a deep, unsettling connection. They reveal humanity's profound discomfort with the body's limits, with death's finality, with chaos. One shows the terror when the body betrays the mind involuntarily. The other, the almost unimaginable lengths of will and suffering employed to force the body into a specific, non-perishable state. Both expose how belief systems, whether faith in saints or a radical path to enlightenment, shape our interpretation of suffering and the very meaning of existence. Thinking about these bizarre corners of history, where does it leave you? What other complex truth or bizarre paradox about the past do you think we should explore? Let me know in the comments below. If you found these journeys into history's strangeness intriguing, maybe consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, because history isn't just dates and battles. It's the quiet, unsettling echo of what people believed, what they feared. and the strange, often uncomfortable truths that sleep just beneath the surface. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring the intriguing depths of the past.